Hey, what's up guys? 2D Gamer back again. Today I figured I'd show my Sega Genesis collection, or at least the bulk of it. I'm not sure if it's the full collection, but this is just what I have with me at the moment. A lot of them are in blank black cases. That's because recently my brother got a bunch of eBay stuff, and a lot of it was Sega Genesis cases, but not necessarily the artwork. So a lot of the games you'll just see black cases, but I'll open up and show you what's inside. But first I'll just go with my cartridge only games. We have Sonic 2, and Sonic 2 is actually the game that came with my Genesis. This cartridge is just an extra cartridge, kind of like this one, Sonic 2, and another Sonic 2. We have King of the Monsters 2, fun fighting game. FIFA International Soccer, put that over there since it's a bigger cart. Vector Man 2. Zero Tolerance, which is actually a first-person shooter on the Genesis. It's actually pretty cool that they were able to actually make a shooter on the Genesis just without the 32X add-on. So it makes me wonder if they wouldn't have ever been, or if they would have been able to make Doom on the Genesis alone, without the 32X. But I think they're using Doom as a way to sell the 32X. Phantom 2040. Strider. Horrible cover art. But that's how a lot of games were. Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure. And I did a comparison between this one and the Super Nintendo version, and this one actually feels and plays better. The Super Nintendo version has bigger sprites and looks better graphically, but this one, I don't know, just has to do with the controls and the feel of the game. Just feels a little better than the Super Nintendo, but whichever version you like and whichever one you grew up with, that's probably the one, that you're more likely to like. Eternal Champions. Oh goodness. I mean, this game will completely and totally whoop your ass. I mean, it's unmerciful. And not only, if you lose against the computer, you go back 2 fights instead of 1. So this one's a tough one. I don't remember if I've ever beaten it without cheating, but I don't know. The Adventures of Batman and Robin. It's a good one too. F-22 Interceptor. Early flight combat game from EA. Looks pretty basic, looks pretty bare, but it's just one of those early games. It's been surpassed, but for the time it would have been pretty cool. Fatal Fury, and then Sonic and Knuckles. This is one of the coolest uses of a cartridge ever. It's kind of like an expansion pack, if you will, for Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, and it's a game on its own. You just plug in Sonic 2 or Sonic 3 and you can play as Knuckles in both of those games. So it's a really cool idea. Just one of those things in gaming history that's just one of the cool ideas, I guess, if I'm going to repeat myself. Alright, so I think that's all my regular cartridge games, at least that I have up here with me. So I'm going to start showing the ones that I have actually in cases. And a lot of them are just plain black cases. So you have Super Street Fighter 2, a plain black case. And this is, the collector types, they don't like regular cartridges or case, without the artwork and whatnot. But you can acquire all that stuff later. There's still people that sell that stuff on eBay. So if I really cared, I could go look for all that stuff. But it's more important to me to have the game. Dinosaurs for Hire. What do we got here? Atomic Runner. Gunstar Heroes. I actually got this game for $13 at GameStop, like right around the time that they stopped selling retro games. Probably about a decade ago. So yeah, I mean, it's $13, and it's more expensive than that now because it's in higher demand. You have Disney's Aladdin, which is a pretty good game. I think it was kind of overhyped because of the animation technology in there. And you know, I like the Super Nintendo version too. It's just a trade-off. They're both really good games if you know you collect both of them. They're both worth it. Jurassic Park on the Sega Genesis. Ooh, what do I got here? Codes or something? Chords. Got chords. I guess I'll open these up since I was doing that anyway. You got Aladdin game and artwork, or book. I mean, and got Star Heroes, artwork, book, and cartridge. NCAA football. It's the only sports game I think I've owned since I was a kid. I remember before I moved out to Arizona, one of my childhood friends, me and him played around in the game and came down. I had a choice to either go for the 2-point conversion or kick the field goal. I kicked the field goal and then we tied the game 101 to 101. Just one of those interesting things. Star Trek The Next Generation. I have no idea what's going on in this game. I got it from a friend. Same friend who gave me the 7800, but he owed me other money previously, so that's how I got my Xbox 360, and he also gave me a Sega Genesis with all the games he had, and one of them was Star Trek The Next Generation. X-Men 2 Clone Wars, and that's a good one too. It can be tough in certain spots, but the first X-Men game was actually harder in my opinion. Battletoads and Double Dragon on the Genesis. It's a good mix and match. I don't know how it compares to the Super Nintendo version. I haven't played the Super Nintendo version. Thunder Force 2, not Thunder Force 4, which is in higher demand because it's more of a straight up shoot 'em up. This one is top down, and it's a decent game, I guess. And then this is the Sonic 2 that came with my Sega Genesis game case and artwork. It was a Genesis 2 model that I first got. Let's see. Balls. Oi. Yeah. My crappy impression of the music. Strange fighting game. I mean, yeah, it got panned in the reviews, but I've always liked it. See, Viewpoint. Picked this one up recently. It's an isometric shooter. It's not too bad, I guess. I haven't really explored it thoroughly, so one of these days I'll have to get into it more if I have more time. Let's see. Elysia Dragoon or Elysia Dragoon. I don't know how you pronounce it, but this is another good one. This one I picked up. I think I bought it online out of different recommendations of good Sega Genesis games. Let's see, what do I got here? Lethal Enforcers 1. I actually have the justifier that goes with this too, the light gun, so, you know, best to play with the light gun, but we had Lethal Enforcers 2 before we got this one. This one was given to us by one of my sister's boyfriends back in the day, and he gave it to us for free with the justifier, so then we had, you know, one light gun for Streets of Rage 2, Lethal Enforcers 2, and Lethal Enforcers 1. I like the second Lethal Enforcers much better. That's just, you know. But the first one's, you know, the modern one, whereas the second one's the cowboy. There's Eternal Champions, a complete version. Game case. Phantasy Star 3. I've never been able to really get into this one. It's kind of boring. I love Phantasy Star 4. And I have never really played through Phantasy Star 2 either. But this one, I don't know, I just can't. It was a little generic, I guess. But, I mean, no offense to people who are fans of Phantasy Star 3, because it goes through multiple generations. I've just never seen through to play it all the way through. Or seen it, been able to, I guess. Let's see what we got here. The Jungle Book. Decent Disney one. That's a recent acquiring. I didn't have a lot of Disney games back when the Genesis was popular because they just weren't my thing, but I've collected some recently. Got Kid Chameleon, you know, pretty blatant Mario ripoff, but it puts its own spin on the formula with the cool little suits and stuff, the samurai suit and some of the other ones that you use to pass through different levels. Splatterhouse 3. Great series, great game. I don't know which one's the best Splatterhouse in the series. I mean, I only have Splatterhouse 3. Echo the Dolphin. Game and case artwork, and ooh, maybe I should send this in. I think maybe Sega of America is still accepting registration cards for Sega Genesis games, huh? Anyway. Let's see. What do I got here? Sid of Valis. It's been a long-running series. This one is kind of a super deformed version of the Valis series. But, I mean, this is like a popular but underrated series. It's got a bunch of hardcore fans on it. I think it was... I don't remember where it started. It might have been Turbo Duo, because I think I've heard Turbo fans talking about the Valis series. But, I mean, that's the only one I have on the Genesis. I have Super Valis on the Super Nintendo. The original Streets of Rage. I didn't get this one for years later. I did never even, you know, as far as I knew, Adam was just the dude you had to save in Streets of Rage 2. It's a quality game, it is, but yeah, I think Streets of Rage 2 definitely surpassed it, and still the best one in the series, in my opinion. Just, you know. Sonic 3, this one I did not grow up with. This one's a recent, I recently acquired this one. The only one I really grew up with was Sonic 2. Because that's the one that came with my Genesis. But, you know, Sonic 2 plus Sonic, or Sonic 3 plus Sonic and Knuckles, you know, it's a really cool combination there. Let's see. What do I got? Wonder Boy in Monster World. Wonder Boy is another classic series. I don't know if I've played Monster World, but I have Wonder Boy 2 on the Master System. And it's kind of like a Zelda 2 style of game, at least the sequels in the Wonder Boy series. I think the first one was what's the other? I can't even think about her. Anyway, later became the I can't even remember right now. So I'm on the spot. Mutant League Football. This is one of the you know, I don't play a lot of sports games, but I can always play games like Mutant League or even like NBA Jam and stuff, because it's really cool, because it's not the typical standard boring sports stuff. If you haven't played it, or you should look it up online if you've never seen footage of it. Just, you know, you can do stuff like kill the ref, and you can bribe the ref so the ref makes a bunch of calls and stuff for the other team or against the other team, and it's just funny. It's one of those games. Mrs. Pac-Man. Again, I acquired this from the same friend that gave me the Genesis and stuff. But I don't remember how this version plays, if it's a good version, or... I think I remember the screen moving up and down, like you didn't see the whole maze from the beginning. But it's probably a small complaint. The Sega version of Spider-Man. There are two Genesis games named just plain Spider-Man. One was Acclaim, or one of their other subsidiaries. The other one was made by Sega. The Sega version is the better version, but it's a decent Spider-Man game. Not the greatest Spider-Man game ever, but it does a good job. Another copy of Echo. This one without the book. We have Jungle Strike, and this is definitely an EA case, because the EA games were the big, you know. I'm not sure why they made their cartridges like that. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up and see exactly what the whole point behind the bigger cartridges was. Except, you know, maybe just to distinguish it as an EA-made game. Exile. This one, I believe, is also on Turbo Duo or Turbo 16, but the Genesis version is supposedly not as good. I haven't played, you know, I don't own a Turbo Graphics or a Turbo Duo, So I'll have to take their word for it, depending on, you know, those people who've played both versions. Saturday Night Slam Masters. This one you can play as Hagar from Final Fight, because it's made by Capcom. It's an interesting wrestling fighting game, to say the least. PTO, Pacific Theater of Operations. Hardcore strategy game. That's what Koei used to be known for before Dynasty Warriors. They've been around a long time. You know, they also make Romancing of the Kingdom, which is, you know, like Dynasty Warriors, but strategy. Then they later took those characters and made a fighting game and then beat 'em ups. Demolition Man. Is it cold in here, or is it just me? I love this movie. The game is decent too. It switches off between side-scrolling stages and tops-down stages that are kind of like Commando on the NES and all the other systems that you can find out there. Genesis port of Battletoads. It's a good port. I mean, I've heard some people, you know, say, well, the music and all this stuff, I'll stick with the NES version, but still a good version of the game. Let me see. What else do I got here? Oh. Sunset Riders. It's almost a different game completely from the Super Nintendo version. I like the Super Nintendo version the best because that's the one I grew up with. This one's recently I acquired it. And some of the stages and stuff are just like completely different, so I guess it depends on, you know, which one you grew up with, but Super Nintendo version, definitely a better version in my opinion. But the Genesis version is still decent. Let's see. Uncharted Waters, New Horizons. It's a role-playing game, basically, like a pirate role-playing game, I think. I haven't played through this one yet, but this one is also made by Koei. Let me see. Super Baseball 2020. Again, I haven't put a lot of time on this. It's just one of those weird sports games, one of those weird EA games, those alternative type sports games. Still don't have Mutant League Hockey, but I have football and I have Super Baseball 2020, which, again, just one of those weird alternatives. Pirates Gold. This is Pirates is a long-running series. It probably started on the PC somewhere, retro PC systems. I've had the Nintendo version of Pirates since I was a kid, but it's never held a save. And you know, Pirates Gold is just another good version of the game for the Genesis. So I think it's in relatively high demand. I don't remember. I haven't checked the prices of it online recently because I own it, so no real reason to look them up. Streets of Rage 3, and again, I like Streets of Rage 3, and I know there are fans of Streets of Rage 3 that would take it over Streets of Rage 2, but no, sorry, no. They got rid of Max, they gave the weapons life meters. Dr. Zan is definitely not a good replacement for Max. But it also has multiple branching endings. You can play as the Kangaroo, you can even play as Shiva, you know, the black-suited, you know, bad guy in Streets of Rage 2 that you fight before Mr. X. Which, you know, and that's cool. And it's got multiple endings, and it's a bit harder, actually. I mean, The Punisher, another good beat 'em up. I just showed a video of The Punisher on the PS2. I mean, two completely different games, obviously, because one is on the Genesis and one is on the PS2. But, I mean, still quality beat 'em up. Batman Returns. Again, I haven't put a lot of time in this one, but don't have the book for it, apparently. Let me see. Shoot here, Batman. Again, a lot of these I never had the case for. They would have been just the caseless games, but with the recent acquisition of Genesis cases, it means I can store whichever ones I want to store, you know, keep safer than just, you know, having them cartridge only and in the elements. Rocket Knight Adventures. It's a good one too. Sequel Sparkster, I believe, was Super Nintendo only. I haven't played Sparkster yet. Rocket Knight's good. It's cutesy and whatnot, but still a quality game. Batman Forever. You know, even though it was acclaim made, it's just bad enough to like. I mean, I kind of like this game. I don't know why. It's not really that good of a game. I just kind of like it. I don't know. Let's see. Gargoyles. It's a good one too. The only thing that really pissed me off about Gargoyles was my local, I think it's ABC station, used to always promise me Gargoyles, and then what the hell would it show me? It would show me Bill Nye the Science Guy. So it would be like, up next on Gargoyles, such and such and such. And then I'm like, yeah, Gargoyles! And then Bill Nye the Science Guy comes on. Do you realize how much I hate Bill Nye the Science Guy? I know some people love Bill Nye for his stupid-ass little show. I hate Bill Nye. I hate his show because instead of showing me Gargoyles, they showed me Bill Nye. Yes, the angst of childhood. McDonald's Treasure Land Adventures. This one is actually made by Treasure. Yeah, I got a sticker in the way, but made by Treasure, you know, the popular Japanese developer. It's got more popularity in recent years, but for the longest time, the really hardcore out there would always be like, Treasure, Treasure! Caesar's Palace. Again, this is one I got from my friend whenever he gave me his Sega Genesis. Still got all his codes and stuff in there, too. Woohoo! I'm not really big into gambling games, but still got one. Oh yeah. I also have the Game Genie, which okay, so a lot of retro games were just tough. And as a kid, you know, I didn't put in like the hardcore hours of playing and, you know, get the whole elitist thing like, well, I play this game with one life and no continues and I always beat it. So, I mean, a lot of times I'd use the Game Genie, especially since we would rent a lot of games in 3 days for $3. And if the game was just one of those games that was going to take a while to learn or whatnot, sometimes we just pull this out, look up the game in the booklets, which I actually still have somewhere, and there you have it. You know, it's like, I think that's how I've beaten Eternal Champions, because that game is tough. X-Men, the first one. Game case. And the only thing I really didn't like is whenever you have Wolverine's claws out or use the special abilities, you know, it has a meter for it, but this one's a tough one, and it's a good one too. Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure. This is also a game I got recently. It's a decent Sonic clone. I generally stay away from cartoon games and Disney games because I just don't care. But, I mean, it's a decent Sonic clone. Not too bad. Would have been good, you know, for kids and stuff. Got them the basics of platform gameplay. The Genesis 6-pack. You know, 6 great games. I think I bought this at a thrift shop years ago. A couple years back, actually. You got Golden Axe, Sonic the Hedgehog, Revenge of Shinobi, Column, Streets of Rage, and Super Hang-On. So, I own Streets of Rage twice over, at least. First one. And this is when they stopped doing the plastic cases. Started going for the cardboard with this little latch or notch in here to hold the game and manuals. Supposedly the cardboard was more expensive to produce, but they did it because it was better for the environment, blah blah blah, but I prefer the plastic cases any day of the week. WWF Royal Rumble. Again, classic wrestling game. Didn't have much, you know, for wrestling sim action, but had a bunch of guys on screen in the Royal Rumble, and that was always fun. You know, whenever newer wrestling games came out after this, it was just mostly 4 people in the ring at once because it couldn't handle all the guys, you know, from in the ring. So I always loved how these, you know, it was hectic. There were a bunch of guys. You just go through and throw a bunch of people out. See if you can make it with your original character you chose. If not, you'd have to beat it with someone else. Sega Genesis version of Earthworm Jim. Earthworm Jim 2. Again, I'm not quite sure. I didn't know I had this one. It's just a recent one that I guess my brother sent up and gave it to me. From what I hear, the Super Nintendo version of Earthworm Jim 2 is probably the best version, but I got the version that I got. NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Great game. This is one I've played since I was a kid. It's a fun game. Plays Bill Clinton and all the stuff. And like I said, the alternative sports games, those are the ones I could, stand to play for the most part. But regular boring Sims, no. And here's an unopened copy of NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Just had that one for years. Maybe I should sell it on eBay and get like $5 for it. Shining Force 2. Again, the state of the case or the cartridge that I get is not as important to me as actually having the game. And this is a great Sega RPG. Even though Super Nintendo, in my opinion, was the best system for role-playing games, the Genesis still had some really good ones. Standouts, the Shining Force series and Phantasy Star 4, in my opinion, two of the best on the system. But I still don't think anyone beats Squaresoft in the 16-bit era. That's just my opinion on the matter. Red Zone. It's a weird one. I haven't played much into it. As you can see, yeah, it's got the rating system. Sega was actually the first to adopt a rating system. That's after they found the blood code in Mortal Kombat and raised a big stink about it. And even without the blood code, the Genesis version of the first Mortal Kombat still plays much better than the Super Nintendo version. Super Nintendo version looked better, but it didn't have the right. It didn't feel as responsive in the controls or the feel. Genesis version was definitely better. At least it's for Mortal Kombat 1. Double Dragon 3. It's a decent version of it. I can actually beat this one. The NES version, not so much. It's got, decent revamped version of their songs, even though it's Flying Edge, aka Acclaim. But Acclaim was hit or miss a lot of times. And it's an okay version of Double Dragon 3. Comic Zone. Fun game, but, and it's got great music too. I mean, you could just sit there and listen to the music. I think I've used it in some of my montage stuff too. It's just one of those games that, showed that the Sega Genesis was actually capable of making great music despite what the stereotype of the system was. College Slam. Basically NBA Jam style, except for with colleges. I haven't really put as much playtime into this as I have in the NBA Jam series itself. I don't know. It's always stuck with NBA Jam more. Let's see. Mortal Kombat. Again, like I said, Genesis version of the first Mortal Kombat, much better than the Super Nintendo version as far as playability. Super Nintendo version looked prettier, but I think I like the Genesis, or not I think, but the Genesis version was the better version. Let's see. Which one? Open up. Mega Turrican. The Turrican series is a popular retro series made by Factor 5. The guys popular later for Star Wars Rogue Squadron and then later Lair, which, yeah. But it's a long-running series. It's a great series, actually. It's a side-scrolling shooter. It's got some unique stuff to it that's really cool. I also have Super Turrican, which is also another really good one. Ren and Stimpy's Invention. I remember renting this, and it's not very hard to beat at all. But, yeah, I remember the show, too. It used to be a kid's show, then I guess they turned it to Adult Swim. I don't know, I haven't really paid attention to it. But, it's a fun game, I guess. Not, pretty quickly, easily beaten. Especially if you got two players. It's a little harder single player. Which one is this? Warrior of Rome. I really haven't played this one, so I can't really comment on it. The thing that really sucks is my Sega Genesis, I don't have an AC adapter for it up here with me, so I have the Genesis, I have my 32X, I have no way of playing either. So, let's see. World of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. And like I said, I didn't play Disney games when I was a kid, but this one is actually really good too. And it's classic, and people still love this game today. And I've played a little bit, and yeah, there's definitely some good quality there. And I don't know if this one, was this one made by Sega? Or was this exclusive to the Genesis? I can't remember. Perhaps someone can tell me. No doubt. Let's see. Flashback. Also from the same developer, made Out of This World, and I think it's Out of This World, or yeah. It's just interesting. It had little cutscenes and stuff for the time, and you know, I've heard some people say, "Oh, it's overrated," and you know, looking back at it, and maybe it was, but I never really played it back in the day. I only recently acquired it. Well, recently acquired as in years ago, but as in I didn't grow up with it. Biohazard Battle. This one's a good shoot 'em up too, with a bunch of weird enemies and stuff. You play and you shoot a bunch of bugs and stuff. It's strange, but it's cool, and it's a quality shooter here. I can't really speak on, you know, how it ranks in, you know, against the best of the Genesis and shoot 'em ups, but because I don't own many shoot 'em ups for the Genesis. Mystic Defender. This one's pretty cool too. Tough in its own way, but just a little guy with this little meter. You can shoot out these. If you charge up this meter up here, you can shoot out these extra big fireballs, or you can just shoot them, you know, without charging it. It's been a while since I played it, so I don't remember fully how tough it is in comparison to other games, or which one. Let's see. Last Battle. I forget exactly. Ooh, is that? Oh, the artwork is reversed. Is this part of one of the Fist of the North Star games? Or I remember hearing something about that, and I recently acquired it just because the cover art was so bad. I'm like, that looks so bad that I have to play this game. And it's actually a decent beat 'em up, tough in its own way, and I haven't put a lot of time into it either. So, you know, I have so many games, so many systems, and only so much time. Let's see. What do we got here? Beyond Oasis. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely Zelda influence in Beyond Oasis, but I mean, it's done really well, and it's one of my more favorite Genesis games. It's, imagine Zelda, but it seems like a more limited world, but a cooler like fighting system. It feels like a beat 'em up fighting system infused in a dungeon type Zelda game, and you get the little familiars, that little fire guy and stuff, and I'm sure you've seen it, or most of you probably played it, or you can look up videos on it to see exactly. I also have the sequel on the Saturn, Legend of Oasis, which most people don't seem to even remember. Let's see, which one are you? Oh, yeah, Toxic Crusaders. Not the greatest. Definitely not. I've heard some people say it's horrid, but I don't know, it's playable. You know, based on the old TV show, Green Guy with the Mop. Toxic Crusaders. I don't know. Just remember their theme. I don't really remember much about the show. I don't think I watched it that much. Let's see. Altered Beast. I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of the game exactly. I mean, it's decent, but there are definitely better games, and this was the game I believe that came with the system at the beginning, or one of the first games for the system, and it would have been, you know, great coming in from, you know, arcades and stuff. You know, you can now play it at home. I still love the cheesy screams whenever they die. You know, it's just so horrid that it's good. But I mean, and no offense to Ultra Beast fans, if you're a fan, you're a fan. I'm not as big a fan as most people. I mean, I've played it a lot over the years, so not that I hate the game or any way, shape, or form. And then, don't remember where I bought this one, but it's in an EA case and it never fit. We got KOMBAT Cars, which is a top-down, you know, racing game, but the most impressive part about it is the music. I've actually used the music in some of my montages of the Genesis and stuff, and its music is actually really good. You know, best quality part of the game, and I haven't played the regular game as much as I probably should have. But like I said, only so much time, only so many, you know, so many games, only so much time. Turtles Tournament Fighter. This one I've had since I was a kid. I've never played the Super Nintendo version, which is apparently they're a lot better. And yeah, this one, it's easy to pass this one. Just get a second controller and play as the other character, and you can skip through pretty much everyone in the game until you get to Triceraton and then Krang and then Ikari. 3 pains in the asses. Stupid Triceraton. It's a decent game. I know it might not compare to the Super Nintendo version, but hey, it is what it is. Subterranea. It's a shoot 'em up style game. And I haven't played it much over the years, so don't have a lot of comments. I mean, just kind of underground shooting stuff. That's a really good description right there. Whew. Ranger X, a tough beat 'em up. I think I even tried using a Game Genie to see how far I could get into this thing once, and I still couldn't beat it. But then again, I think I got to a level where I didn't know exactly what to do. But it's a good one. Oh, looks like I got some codes in the case too. Quality one right there. Strange thing is, whenever I made my Genesis montage, whenever it got to Ranger X, the sound just cut off completely. And I couldn't get the sound to come back up. Like, I don't think I messed the sound at all. It just cuts out and it's like, oh, Ranger X in silence. But you get your little robot guy, and sometimes you can get in your little bike and stuff, and, you know, again, another great description right there. Street Fighter II Special Championship Edition. Say what you want, and I know there's a lot of Super Nintendo fans of Street Fighter II Turbo and all that, but Genesis 6-button controller, I don't care who you are, it's so much better to have 3 buttons and 3 buttons across than it is to try and hit trigger buttons in order to get certain moves to go. I mean, Super Nintendo controller was not as good. I mean, I know the arcade fans are like, well, just get an arcade stick, and yeah, that can nullify that, but I've always used a D-pad and controllers for fighting games, so as far as I'm concerned, for Street Fighter type games, the Genesis still has the best controller of all time, with the 6-button, not the 3-button. If you have a 3-button, then definitely the Super Nintendo version controls better, but the 6-button, I'm sorry, there's no real comparison there. That might not make me popular with that opinion, but again, I just do my own thing. And if you have a different opinion, that's cool too. I'm not gonna, you know, it doesn't bother me. I'm accepting of the fact that not everyone thinks like I do, and that's cool. Yeah. Dynamite Heady, another treasure game. Decent, definitely a good one there. Classic, and I don't remember what other systems. I think it was later on the Super Nintendo, or maybe it was made at the same time. I just remember when I first got my Sega Genesis, they had Sega Visions magazine put in or packed in with the system, and they'd always have advertisements of Dynamite Heady. And so I always wanted to play it, and I didn't get to play it for decades later. Let's see. Down pretty last few here. Earthworm Jim on the Sega Genesis. This one has levels and stuff that weren't found in the Super Nintendo version, but just to show you just how slanted some of the old gaming media was, and a lot of their ideas and stuff are still carried on. I remember video or game players, that's what it is, gave the Super Nintendo version a higher score than the Sega Genesis version, even though the Super Nintendo version does not have as many levels, and they cut out some of the levels. So, it's just one of those things where, I don't know, you can go back and be like, oh, they're slanted and all that stuff. It's just kind of interesting. I don't really care. And I find a lot of the times whenever they say, oh, the Super Nintendo version is always better or this much better, it's usually a case of opinion, especially when it comes to the music. Because sometimes sometimes like if you play Separation Anxiety on the Super Nintendo and then you play the Genesis version, Genesis music is terrible, but then you also forget those were made by Acclaim, so, But in other times, like, say for Hyperstone Heist, which I have right here. I did have it in the original case because this is one of the games that I got with my Sega Genesis, but the plastic came off, so I found an old rental case and put it in there. I actually like Hyperstone Heist better than Turtles in Time. And again, that might not be popular, but playing both of them, Turtles in Time, the controls in Hyperstone are a lot more responsive, and I actually like the music better in Hyperstone, but that's probably because I grew up with it. Whereas Turtles in Time, I don't think I acquired until I was 19 or 20. So, but I'd rented Turtles in Time multiple times as well. And I was thinking that Turtles in Time was longer, but I think Hyperstone is actually a little bit longer, or at least it felt like that. Because when I finally got it, so, I mean, I know Turtles in Time is the big one, and some of the levels are the same, and yes, in Hyperstone, they don't throw the foot at the screen, but just the feel and playability, it just, controls feel tighter, and I like that you don't have to hit, tap twice in one direction to run. You have a run button, and you can do all the maneuvers and stuff. So, I do like Hyperstone better. But then again, like I said, this is the one I grew up with, as opposed to Turtles in Time, which I only rented and, didn't get until I was much older. Because I was 9 years old whenever I got my Sega Genesis. Got Contra Hardcore. Only Contra game for the Genesis. Tough-ass Contra game, too. Again, I've beaten it some ways, because there's multiple paths, multiple endings, and the easiest way to beat it is in the junkyard. Instead of going to fight the boss, you jump up and fight in the arena. And that's the easiest way to beat it, but I've explored it more extensively with a Game Genie. And I know, oh, you sissy, you suck, but, when I was a kid, I didn't get into the hardcore, I gotta do this type attitude and mentality. And yeah, it's a tough Contra game. It's a good Contra game, and definitely worth the play and definitely worth the look, especially if you're a fan of the series. So I mean, it's one that I don't hear get a lot of mention because it was on the Genesis instead of the traditional Nintendo platform, which is pretty much where Contra, came up on. Got Castlevania Bloodlines. Another one. This one is a really good Castlevania game. I still like Super Castlevania 4 better, but this one is still very quality and shows off a lot of good effects for the Genesis. And, cool visual effects, good, classic gameplay, and you can play as a Belmont with his whip, or, what's his name? The guy with the sphere. Spear, not sphere. I can't even remember. I can't think today. It's just how it goes. I have Phantasy Star 4. Again, I think this is, aside from maybe Shining Force 2, this is easily the best role-playing game on the Genesis, as far as I'm concerned. I think maybe Shining Force I might like a little better, but I remember it getting like a relatively low review in Game Players, again, because, the battles and, it's generic and all this stuff, but I really did enjoy this one. Don't know. Again, I'm not sure if I like Shining Force 2 or Shining Force better than Phantasy Star 4, but they're both, really good examples for role-playing games on the Genesis. Even, like I said, Super Nintendo role-playing library was much better. Landstalker. And this one, basically a Zelda-type game. Sort of a isometric view. And the diagonal jumping and stuff. There's some jump stuff in here that's kind of a pain in the butt, but I think the guys who made this later went on to make Alundra on the PS1, I think. Don't quote me on that one. But, Alundra's another great, Zelda-style game. tough too. But Landstalker, that's another good, action RPG is what we would have called it, but now we'd call it more of just an adventure game. Not like the old school adventure games. Lethal Enforcers 2. My brother and I, we bought this brand new when it came out. And I think it ended up being over $70 with taxes and everything. So it's probably the most expensive game I've ever bought as far as buying brand new. I don't even think I'd pay $70 for some special edition. And you also forget this is back when $70 was actually, worth something. Whenever pay was lower, and I used to get $3 a week for allowance, and I could go and have a junk food feast at my local stores for that. So I mean, hard-earned money at the time, but then again, our money was actually worth something then. And here we have it. This is the last game I have with me right now. Streets of Rage 2. Probably my favorite Genesis game. One of my favorite, easily in my top 10 of all time. I've played through this game so many times, it's not even funny. I love this game. I mean, this game is so good, even my sisters who don't play games will go through and runs on this game. I mean, some days, we'd waste, just playing through, and then, me and my brother would stop, and then my sisters would spend the next 4 or 5 hours just playing through over and over and over again. It's just one of those games, just simple beat 'em up. And when you look at it, yeah, the characters are pretty much a direct rip-off of Final Fight characters, but I still like Streets of Rage much better than Final Fight, but again, that's what I was raised with, as opposed to, Final Fight. But if you look at the first Final Fight on the Super Nintendo, it's only one player, so, I don't know, just Streets of Rage, always a better series in my opinion. But then again, that's my opinion, and you don't have to share it. And so, that's it. As far as what I have with me, I can't really think of what else I might have had or have. So that's my Sega Genesis collection, at least as far as I have with me right now. And as far as some of my opinions on different games, again, if you have a differing opinion, that's cool too. Like I said, most people choose Turtles in Time over Hyperstone. Most people might not like what I think of the Genesis 6-button controller, for Street Fighter, but the D-pad and everything on the Genesis 6-button is still much better as far as I'm concerned for fighting games than the Super Nintendo controller, especially when it comes to 3-punch, 3-kick. But again, just mostly depends on what you were raised with, what you were used to, and I had my Genesis a few years before I got my Super Nintendo. So I mean, I rented the hell out of games and played the hell out of games on the Genesis, and we eventually got 6-button controllers, which much better than the 3-button. So there you have it. That's, like I said, as far as I remember, and it's not as big as my PS1 or PS2 collection by far, but when I was younger, I only had so much money to go around, whereas when I started getting older and games started getting cheaper, actually, bargain bins and then game stores were more common. Town I grew up in, the only place to find used games was at a pawn shop, and they were way overpriced. So the systems I had when I was younger, my collections are smaller for them, or systems I got like too late. Like if you saw my Saturn collection, it's a smaller collection too. So there you have it, my Sega Genesis collection, as far as I remember, or Genesis or Mega Drive. And I was going to show my 32X games with it, but I couldn't find all of them either. So I mean, I guess I could show you. These are just the 4 of them that I have out with me. Shadow Squadron, like a Star Fox type game. Metalhead, it's a big, mech shooter. 36 Great Golf Magazine presents 36 Great Holes starring Fred Couples. And these games I got with the 32X. I've only acquired a few 32X games since, but I don't know where the rest of them are, like Virtua Racer and stuff. And Primal Rage, which was never really that good of a game in my opinion. It's kind of a weird one. But if I find more of my 32X games somewhere in a tub, I'll tack them on or show them. But I don't have a ton of them. There weren't a lot of games for the system, and some of the more collectible games are really, or the more sought after, I should say, are really way more expensive than they should be. It's not a talk on the quality, it's a talk on, or not a, I don't know. a statement on the quality, it's a statement on just the demand. But anyway, so that's what I have, and like I said, most of them are blank black cases, so if you're coming in at the end, you kind of missed what games were in those cases. And I don't have like a list anywhere really of all these games. I suppose I could compile one and then link to it, which I guess I'll have to do later. So that's it, and talk to you guys later.